ABC General Hospital Spoilers reveal that there are moments in Port Charles when the balance of power shifts so quietly that no one notices until suddenly everything changes at once. Lucas finds himself standing at the center of one of those moments, holding more than just information, holding consequences that could ripple through every corner of the city. What began as grief over Marco's death has transformed into something far more dangerous, far more deliberate. Lucas is no longer searching blindly for answers. He knows, and that knowledge changes everything. The truth about Cullum does not come to Lucas as a single revelation, but as a slow, suffocating certainty. Each piece of evidence he uncovers reinforces what he already fears. Cullum is not just involved, he is at the heart of it all. The attack on Marco was not random, not a moment of chaos or miscalculation. It was intentional, calculated, and protected by layers of deception designed to ensure that no one would ever connect the dots. But Lucas has connected them. He has seen enough, heard enough, and now carries within him a version of the truth that Cullum would do anything to keep buried. What makes Lucas's position even more precarious is where that truth has led him. Wyndemere, with its shadowed corridors and suffocating silence, becomes more than just a setting, it becomes a test. Every step Lucas takes inside that estate feels like stepping deeper into a space where secrets are not just hidden, but guarded. The walls themselves seem to listen, to absorb every movement, every hesitation. And yet, Lucas presses forward, driven by something stronger than fear. Guilt, anger, and a desperate need to make things right push him toward the one place he knows could change everything: the safe. Accessing the safe is not just a physical act. It is a crossing of a line Lucas cannot uncross. When it finally opens, it reveals more than he expected, more than he is prepared for. Inside lies the medication tied to Britt, a fragile thread of hope that has been withheld, controlled, turned into leverage. But beyond that, there are documents, fragments of information that, when taken together, form a devastating picture. Cullum's movements, his connections, the inconsistencies that no longer feel accidental. It is all there, waiting for someone brave or desperate enough to see it for what it truly is. In that moment, Lucas realizes he is no longer just a witness. He is a threat. Holding that evidence shifts something inside him. The fear does not disappear, but it becomes sharper, more focused. He understands the risk now in a way he didn't before. This is not just about exposing Cullum. This is about surviving long enough to make that exposure matter. Because what Lucas holds is not just proof of guilt. It is leverage powerful enough to disrupt systems that were never meant to be challenged. And at the center of that disruption is Jason. For so long, Jason's fate has felt sealed, locked behind the invisible walls of WSB authority, beyond the reach of anyone who might want to help him. But now, for the first time, there is a fracture in that certainty. If Cullum is exposed as a double agent, if the truth about his actions becomes undeniable, then everything surrounding Jason's situation must be reevaluated. The narrative that justified his capture begins to unravel. The assumption of guilt becomes questionable. The possibility of his return, once distant, almost impossible, suddenly feels real. Lucas understands this instinctively. The evidence in his hands is not just about justice for Marco. It is about rewriting the story that has kept Jason imprisoned. If Cullum's duplicity is revealed, then Jason's actions can no longer be framed as aggression. They can be seen for what they truly were: survival, defense, a response to a threat that no one else fully understood. But truth in Port Charles is never simple. The more Lucas considers what he has uncovered, the more he feels the weight of it pressing down on him, because every step forward brings him closer to exposure. And exposure in this world does not come without consequences. He knows there are eyes on him, even if he cannot always see them. He knows that people like Cullum do not leave loose ends, and right now, Lucas is the loosest end of all. There's also the question of whether the truth will even be allowed to exist once it is revealed. The structures Lucas is up against are not built to collapse easily. WSB operates within a space where morality bends to necessity, where the line between right and wrong is often rewritten to suit the moment. Even with evidence, even with proof, there is no guarantee that justice will follow. There is no guarantee that Jason will simply be released, that the truth will be accepted without resistance. And yet, Lucas moves forward anyway, because for him, this is no longer a choice. It is an obligation to Marco, to Britt, to himself, and now to Jason. The idea that he could be the one to bring Jason back to Port Charles does not feel like a possibility. It feels like a responsibility he cannot ignore. Every risk he takes, every boundary he crosses, is fueled by that belief. What makes this moment so explosive is not just the information Lucas holds, but what that information represents. It is a catalyst, a trigger, the beginning of something that cannot be contained once it starts. The truth about Cullum is not just a revelation, it is a disruption powerful enough to fracture alliances, to expose hidden agendas, to force every character connected to this web to confront what they have been avoiding. And at the center of it all stands Lucas, a man who never intended to become this deeply entangled, now carrying the weight of a decision that could change everything. If he succeeds, if he manages to bring this truth into the light without being silenced, then the consequences will be immediate and undeniable. Jason could return, Cullum could fall. The carefully constructed illusions that have shaped recent events could collapse all at once. But if he fails, if even one step goes wrong, then everything Lucas has risked, everything he has uncovered, could disappear with him. That is the edge he stands on now, not just between success and failure, but between survival and erasure, between truth and silence. And in Port Charles, those lines have never been more dangerous. In Port Charles, revenge does not erupt all at once. It builds, layer by layer, until it becomes something too heavy to contain, something that begins to reshape the people carrying it. Lucas is no longer the man he was before Marco's death. The grief that once threatened to consume him has hardened into something sharper, something more focused, but also far more dangerous. It no longer manifests as sorrow alone. It has become direction. It has become purpose. And at the center of that purpose stands Cullum, not as a distant enemy, but as the living embodiment of everything Lucas has lost. At the beginning, Lucas believed revenge would be simple. Find the truth, expose it, make Cullum pay. It sounded almost clean in his mind, as though justice and vengeance could exist in the same space without colliding. But the deeper he moved into that path, the more he realized how naive that belief had been. Cullum was not just a man with blood on his hands. He was a system, a network of lies, protection, manipulation, and calculated silence. Every step Lucas took toward him revealed another layer of complexity, another reason why this would never be a fight that could be won alone. And yet, for a long time, Lucas refused to accept that. There was something in him that needed to carry this alone, as if sharing the burden would somehow dilute what Marco meant to him. He told himself that this was personal, that it had to be personal, that bringing others into it would only complicate things. But beneath that reasoning was something else, something quieter but more dangerous. Fear. Not fear of Cullum, but fear of what it would mean to admit that he could not do this by himself. That illusion begins to crack the moment Jason enters the equation again. Jason's absence had created a vacuum, not just in action, but in stability. He had always been the one who understood how to operate in the gray, how to navigate situations where right and wrong were not clearly defined. Without him, everything felt unbalanced, as if Port Charles itself had lost one of its anchors. And now, with the possibility of his return becoming real, Lucas is forced to confront a truth he has been avoiding. This was never meant to be a solo mission. The idea of working with Jason is not comforting. It is unsettling. Because Jason represents a world Lucas has never fully belonged to, a world where decisions are made quickly and consequences are accepted without hesitation. Lucas is a man driven by emotion, by guilt, by the need to make sense of loss. Jason is driven by instinct, by survival, by a clarity that does not allow for second guessing. Bringing those two forces together does not create ease, it creates intensity. But it also creates possibility. Because Lucas begins to understand something that changes the entire shape of his plan. Revenge without structure is chaos. And chaos, when directed at someone like Cullum, is not just ineffective, it is fatal. Cullum does not lose control easily. He anticipates. He adapts. He eliminates threats before they have the chance to fully form. And that means Lucas, acting alone, would never even reach the point of confrontation. He would be stopped long before that, silenced in a way that ensures the truth dies with him. Jason changes that equation. Where Lucas sees the emotional weight of what must be done, Jason sees the strategy. Where Lucas hesitates, Jason moves. Where Lucas feels the pull of grief, Jason understands how to channel it into action that produces results. And slowly, almost reluctantly, Lucas begins to accept that this is what the situation demands. Not just revenge, but precision. Not just anger, but control. The plan that begins to form between them is not spoken aloud in full, but it exists in the spaces between their understanding. Cullum will not be taken down by exposure alone. He will not be undone by evidence that can be buried, dismissed, or manipulated. What is needed is something more decisive, something that removes him from the equation entirely, and that realization marks the true turning point in Lucas's transformation. Because now, he is no longer asking how to prove Cullum's guilt, he is asking how to end it. At the same time, another layer of consequence begins to unfold, one that stretches beyond Lucas and Jason, one that reshapes the broader narrative surrounding Sunny. For weeks, Sonny has been entangled in accusations that never fully aligned with the truth, but in Port Charles, perception often becomes its own kind of reality. Those suspicions have lingered, casting a shadow that refuses to lift. But the deeper Lucas and Jason move into Cullum's world, the clearer it becomes that those suspicions were not just misplaced, they were part of something larger. Cullum did not just act. He redirected attention. He allowed others to carry blame that was never theirs to begin with. And in doing so, he created a version of events that kept himself protected while others were left to deal with the fallout. The truth Lucas now holds has the power to dismantle that narrative completely. It does not just expose Cullum, it restores balance. It clears Sonny in a way that goes beyond legal vindication. It redefines how every decision, every accusation, every moment of doubt is understood. But truth, even when it is powerful, is not enough on its own. Lucas begins to feel the weight of that realization pressing down on him, because exposing Cullum is only one part of the equation. Surviving long enough to make that exposure matter is another. And the closer he moves toward action, the more he becomes aware of the danger tightening around him. Cullum is not unaware. He senses shifts. He notices patterns. And somewhere, instinctively, he begins to recognize that something is changing, that the control he once held is no longer absolute. That is when the real tension begins. Lucas is no longer just a man seeking justice. He is a target. Every move he makes carries risk. Every decision feels like it could be the one that exposes him too soon. The knowledge he carries is both his greatest weapon and his greatest vulnerability. Because in a world like this, knowledge does not protect you. It marks you. It places you in the path of people who cannot afford for you to exist. And yet, despite all of that, Lucas does not step back. Because somewhere along the way, the fear of losing himself became less powerful than the need to finish what he started. Marco's death is no longer just a wound. It is a line that cannot be erased, a moment that demands resolution. And Jason's return, Sonny's vindication, the collapse of Cullum's control, these are no longer separate outcomes, they are connected. They are part of the same chain reaction that Lucas has set into motion. What makes this moment so haunting is the understanding that there is no clean ending waiting at the other side. Even if Lucas succeeds, even if Cullum falls and Jason returns and Sonny is cleared, the path to that outcome will leave scars. The choices made along the way will not disappear. They will linger, shaping who Lucas becomes long after this is over. And perhaps that is the true cost of what he is doing. Not just the danger, not just the risk of failure, but the transformation itself. The realization that in order to bring justice into a world built on deception, he must step into that same darkness, must learn to operate within it, must accept that some lines, once crossed, cannot be uncrossed. Still, he moves forward. Because for Lucas, there is no version of this story where he walks away and pretends none of it happened. There is no peace in silence, no comfort in avoidance. There is only the path ahead, uncertain, dangerous, but necessary. And as that path leads him closer to Cullum, closer to the moment where everything converges, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. This is no longer just about revenge. It is about reckoning. A reckoning that will not just end one man's control, but expose everything that has been hidden beneath it, no matter how many lives it changes in the process.